Hello and welcome to Lost Love Chronicles.
Dear listeners, before we get started, drop a quick hi in the comments and let us know where you're tuning in from. Also, if you have any suggestions for us to make the channel better, please let us know. Now let's start with the story. I wiped the sweat from my brow as I tightened the final bolt on the last support beam. The late afternoon sun beat down on the site, and the smell of sawdust and steel filled the air. This project, our biggest, yet was almost finished. A luxury condominium complex with sweeping views and top-tier amenities. The kind of build that would put Hastings builders at the top of the city's development food chain. I was 35, and I clawed my way up here from nothing. No family money, no shortcuts, just grit, long hours, and a refusal to cut corners. Looking good, boss, Liam called from across the slab. My foreman. Reliable. Straight shooter. Inspections tomorrow at 9, he added. I nodded, eyes scanning the site like a general surveying a battlefield. Every wire, beam, and panel needed to be flawless. Make sure everything's perfect, I said. I don't want a single issue. My phone buzzed. I pulled it from my pocket and checked the message. Doctor moved my appointment to 3 p.m. tomorrow. Dad's picking me up. Ariana. I frowned. For the past 3 months, since her diagnosis with that rare inflammatory condition, her father had inserted himself into every part of her care. At first, I appreciated the support. But it had shifted. What used to be helpful had become invasive. He was always around hovering, arranging appointments, managing her medications. Everything okay? Liam asked, noticing my face. Yeah, I muttered, sliding the phone back into my pocket. Just family stuff. That evening, I stepped into our kitchen and saw Ariana sitting at the island, phone in hand. The soft overhead lights made the marble counters glow, and the faint hum of the refrigerator was the only sound. She looked up and smiled faintly. At 33, she was still every bit as stunning as the night I met her at a charity gala 7 years ago. Auburn hair fell in waves over her shoulders, and those green eyes, always searching, always sharp, met mine. How are you feeling today? I asked, leaning in to kiss her cheek. Better, she said, and I noticed the subtle way she tilted her phone screen away from me. Dad brought me some new supplements. The specialist recommended them. Ron was here again. I kept my voice level, careful. He was in the neighborhood, she said with a little shrug. Besides, he enjoys feeling useful since retirement. I bit back the frustration rising in my throat. Of course he was in the neighborhood. He always was. I thought we agreed I'd handle the pharmacy runs. She didn't look up. He was just trying to help, Blair. I walked over to the cabinet, poured myself 2 fingers of whiskey, and turned back to her. I'd like to come to your appointment tomorrow. I cleared my schedule. A flicker of something crossed her face. Alarm? Guilt? I couldn't tell. That's not necessary, she said quickly. You've got the inspection tomorrow, remember? Dad already arranged to take me. I can reschedule the inspection. She sighed. Blair, you know how important this project is. Besides, these appointments are boring. It's just reviews and medication adjustments. I didn't respond. Just took a sip of the whiskey and studied her. Later that night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling. Ariana's steady breathing beside me was the only sound in the room. Something felt off. Ariana's condition had appeared out of nowhere 6 months ago, mysterious symptoms that shifted and morphed. 1 week it was joint pain, the next fatigue and blurred vision. Then rashes. Then gut issues. No pattern. No predictability. The treatments were expensive and always seemed to be changing new prescriptions, new supplements, new specialists. But every time I asked questions, she got defensive. Too defensive. I wasn't sure when I stopped feeling like her partner in this and started feeling like a bystander. The next morning, I made a decision. After confirming Ariana was still asleep, her breathing slow, her face relaxed, I stepped out of the bedroom and closed the door softly behind me. I called Liam. You good for the inspection? I asked. Yeah, boss. Everything's under control. You not coming? Something came up. I need you to take point. Copy that. I'll make sure it's tight. I didn't explain further. I grabbed my keys and headed across town to my brother's apartment. Franklin Hastings. 3 years younger, always drifting through life like things would eventually just click into place. While I was busting my butt on job sites and hammering out contracts, Franklin was bouncing between jobs, parties, and bad decisions. Lately, he was working as a pharmaceutical sales rep, a gig I'd helped him land through one of my clients who owed me a favor. When he opened the door, the stench of last night's takeout hit me. His hair was a mess, shirt wrinkled, eyes puffy. Blair? He mumbled, rubbing his eyes. What's up, man? Thought you had that big inspection today. We need to talk. I pushed past him into the cluttered apartment. About Ariana's condition. Franklin closed the door behind me, scratching the back of his head. What about it? You're in pharma sales. You know doctors. I need a straight answer about this treatment plan Ron's pushing. He shifted uncomfortably, backing toward the kitchen. Look, bro, I don't specialize in her condition. It's not like I've got insider knowledge or something. Don't give me that, I said. Ron's not just helping anymore. He's taking over. And I want to know why. Franklin avoided my eyes. Maybe talk to her doctor directly? I've tried. They'll only speak to Ariana. Or Ron. He looked down, fiddling with a bottle cap on the counter. You're acting strange, I said, stepping closer. Is there something I should know? No, man, it's just medical stuff makes me nervous. You know that. Franklin checked his watch. Hey, listen, I've got a meeting across town. We'll catch up later, okay? I didn't argue. I walked out. But something in his body language, in the way he couldn't meet my eye, something wasn't right. He was hiding something. At 2:55 p.m., I walked into the specialist's office. I wasn't supposed to be there, but I needed answers. I wasn't going to sit on the sidelines anymore. And there he was, Ronald Keller, sitting in the waiting room, looking exactly like a man who never relinquished control even after retirement. At 68, he still had that towering, immovable presence, the kind that made boardrooms fall silent. Blair, he said with that cold, clipped tone of his. Didn't expect to see you here. I'm her husband, I said. Where is she? With the doctor. We should be called back shortly. A nurse stepped into the room, clipboard in hand. We're ready, she said. Ron stood immediately. I'm coming too, I said, moving toward him. His jaw tightened. That's not necessary, he said, his voice low and hard. I've been handling Ariana's care. She's my wife. And my daughter. He leaned in, his voice dropping to a growl. Who do you think has been making sure she gets proper treatment while you're busy playing with your little construction toys? My temper spiked. I took a step forward. I'm coming in. Ron didn't flinch. He raised a hand and pressed it flat against my chest. No, you're not. I looked him dead in the eye. What the hell gives you the right? He didn't answer at first, just reached into his briefcase and pulled out a document. He shoved it at me like it was some kind of victory trophy. This does. I stared at the paper. Medical power of attorney. Notarized. Legal. Signed by Ariana. My eyes locked on her signature, elegant, fluid. Undeniably hers. I couldn't speak for a second. The blood in my ears roared like a freight train. Why would she do this without even discussing it with me? I asked finally, my voice low, disbelieving. Ron straightened, smug as ever. Because she knows I have her best interests at heart. He smirked. Now if you'll excuse me, I have a meeting with my daughter's doctor. I didn't move. Couldn't. I just stood there and watched him vanish behind the clinic doors, that document still trembling slightly in my hand. I looked down at the notary seal. Paige Winslow. The name hit me like a slap. Paige Winslow. She'd been Ron's executive assistant for nearly 2 decades. Of course. That evening, I waited for Ariana to come home. When she finally walked into our bedroom, I was sitting on the edge of the bed, the power of attorney on the nightstand beside me. Why did you give your father medical power of attorney without telling me? I asked, standing. She froze. Her eyes widened for a second. Then her face softened into that calm, practiced expression she always used when trying to defuse me. It's just a precaution, Blair. She stepped closer. Dad suggested it in case decisions need to be made while you're working. You know how consumed you get with your projects. That's what marriage is for, I snapped. We make those decisions together. Why are you shutting me out? I'm not. She took my hands. It's temporary. Just until this treatment cycle is complete. Dad understands all the medical jargon better than we do. His college roommate was a renowned immunologist, remember? I pulled my hands away. Something about the way she said it. It felt rehearsed. Like she'd practiced it. I want to be more involved in your treatment, I said. No more appointments without me. Blair, be reasonable. Her tone changed. Sharper. Your schedule's unpredictable. These appointments come up suddenly. Then they wait until I can be there, I said, voice tight. It doesn't work that way. She snapped. This is my health we're talking about. That ended it. She packed up a blanket and a pillow and retreated to the guest bedroom. I heard the door click shut. I didn't sleep. I stayed up reading everything I could about medical power of attorney in Illinois. And that's when I confirmed what I already suspected. Paige Winslow, the notary on the document, was Ron's former executive assistant. The woman probably wouldn't have thought twice before stamping whatever he put in front of her. The next morning, I picked up the phone and called Dr. Forrest Bennett, Ariana's primary physician. Old college friend of mine. Bennett, it's Blair. He was cautious. Hey, Blair. I hope this isn't about Ariana's case. You know I can't discuss it, HIPAA laws and all. I know. I'm not asking for details. I just need to understand something. She signed over power of attorney to her father. I'm being shut out. He paused, then said carefully, I can't talk about specifics, but I can tell you this. I leaned in, gripping the phone tighter. I've been concerned about some of the specialist referrals she's received lately. They weren't ones I recommended. My stomach dropped. Who recommended them? There was a pause. Then Bennett said, quietly, her father provided the names. And the treatments. The medications. I could hear him choosing his words carefully. Again, I can't discuss specifics, but I'll say this as your friend, follow the money. I frowned. What's that supposed to mean? Just follow the money, Blair. That's all I can say. I took his advice. I started tracking every transaction that went through our joint account. Late at night, after Ariana was asleep or said she was, I'd log in and scroll, looking for anything out of place. And I found it. Large withdrawals. Tens of thousands. Treatments supposedly not covered by insurance. Supplements, tests, consultations with out-of-network specialists. When I asked her about them, she went on the defensive instantly. Do you think I want to be sick? She snapped at me one night in the kitchen. You think I'm choosing this? That's not what I'm saying, I told her, keeping my voice even. But these costs are out of control, and we never discussed them. You don't support my recovery, she said bitterly. You're more concerned about money than my health. It was like trying to grab smoke. Every question I asked turned into an accusation. Every time I tried to understand, I ended up being the villain. Then came the night everything fell apart. Ariana was supposed to be at physical therapy with Ron, of course. I had just gotten off the phone with a subcontractor. Emergency at a site. I rushed into my home office to grab the permits. That's when I saw it. Her tablet. On the coffee table. She never left her devices unattended. Never unlocked. I reached for it on instinct, thinking I'd move it out of the way. But the screen lit up. No passcode. Just the prompt for entry. I tried our anniversary just to see. It opened. A soft ding. A message notification. But not from any app one recognized. I shouldn't have looked. I know that. I don't spy. I don't invade privacy. But something in my gut twisted and I tapped it. What I saw hit me like a gut punch. Messages. Between Ariana and Franklin. My own brother. They went back over a year. A year. It wasn't just an affair. It was a scheme. A long, calculated scheme. They'd been together before her illness even began. And the illness? Fabricated. Or at best, exaggerated. Manipulated. Each symptom twisted to justify more treatment. More medications. More money. All of it funneled into offshore accounts. Controlled by Ron. My father-in-law. I scrolled with a growing numbness in my chest. One message from Ariana to Franklin stopped me cold. Dad's almost got the POA finalized. Once we have full control of the medical decisions and accounts, we can increase the transfers without Blair noticing. Franklin's reply made my skin crawl. Your dad's brilliant. By the time your condition requires extended care abroad, we'll have cleaned out enough to disappear. The dumb scum sucker works so hard, he doesn't even notice what's happening under his nose. I stared at the screen. The blood in my head was a drumbeat. Ariana, Franklin, Ron, all of them. They didn't just want to rob me. They wanted to erase me. The final piece came in a recent message. Franklin had written, can't wait for tomorrow. After your appointment, come straight to my place. Your dad will cover with another bad reaction story if Blair calls. 3 more months, and we're home free, baby. That was it. I closed the tablet. My hands were trembling, but my mind was clear, cold, focused. I picked up my phone and began taking photos of the messages. Every last one. Evidence. I called Max the moment I finished saving the last of the screenshots. Meet me at my office in an hour, he said, voice clipped but alert after I gave him the bare bones of what I'd found. Bring everything. And Blair, don't confront them. Not yet. The element of surprise is our only advantage. When Ariana came home that evening, her cheeks were flushed and her posture slouched just enough to signal exhaustion. Physical therapy was brutal today, she said, dropping her bag at the door. I didn't flinch. I didn't raise my voice or ask any questions. I smiled, stepped forward, and kissed her cheek. You're pushing yourself too hard, I murmured. Why don't you rest? I'll make dinner tonight. She blinked at me, surprised. That's sweet. Thanks. Inside, I was coiled like a spring. But outside, I was her loving, concerned husband. I held her hand. I asked about the exercises. I played the part. But my mind was already at war. Max leaned back in his leather chair the next morning, eyes scanning the screenshots I'd printed out and laid across his desk. They've created the perfect scam, he said flatly, tapping a finger against the topmost page. Medical power of attorney gives Ron control over treatment decisions. With fabricated medical records, they can justify enormous expenses, then frame you as the negligent husband if you start asking questions. I stared out the floor-to-ceiling windows of Max's downtown office, the skyline stretching across the horizon like a cruel joke. I'd helped build so many of those buildings. My work. My legacy. How did I not see this coming? I muttered. Because you trusted them, Max said without pity. That's not weakness. But they've exploited it as one. Now we need to be smarter. He leaned forward, eyes locking with mine. Have you checked your business accounts? They're separate from our personal ones. Check them anyway. People this calculating don't stop at one target. Later that afternoon, I did. and I found it an attempted login from an unrecognized device. Denied, but still. Someone had tried. Ron? Franklin? Ariana? It didn't matter. Max was right. This was bigger than I'd thought. We need more evidence, he told me when I called back. Right now, it's your word against theirs. And with those medical records, and that POA, they have a compelling narrative. That's when I brought in Damien Russo. He was a former military intelligence officer, a friend of Max's from a particularly nasty divorce case a few years back, and he knew exactly how to operate in the shadows. In 2 days, Damien had installed discrete cameras throughout the house, hidden in light fixtures, behind air vents, even in the corners of our bedroom and kitchen. He also began tailing Ariana, Franklin, and Ron separately. Within a week, the evidence began to pile up. Ariana spent most afternoons at Franklin's apartment, laughing, drinking wine, watching movies. Not at therapy. Ron met with doctors in low-traffic cafes, slipping them thick envelopes that Damien strongly suspected held cash for what, we could guess. But the most damning? Damien said during one of our evening check-ins. She doesn't show any symptoms when she's alone. He showed me the footage. Ariana pacing confidently on the phone, jogging up the stairs, dancing absently to a song on the radio. No limp. No fatigue. No pain. They're planning to move against you soon, Damien told me after 2 weeks of surveillance. I intercepted a call between Ron and their attorney. I sat up straighter. When? They're preparing to request temporary control of all marital assets. I blinked. On what grounds? Your wife's deteriorating condition and the urgent need for specialized treatment abroad. I swallowed the bile rising in my throat. When? After next Tuesday's appointment with the specialist, he said grimly. They're going to claim a significant downturn that requires immediate intervention. I nodded once, jaw tight. Then we moved first. The decision settled into my chest like concrete. No more hesitation. No more trying to make sense of their lies. My first move was to protect what I'd built the business. My legacy. I called Laura my CFO. Loyal, sharp as a razor, and one of the few people I trusted completely. We're amending the operating agreement, I told her the next morning over coffee in my office. I need ironclad protection, no spousal access, no third-party signatures on financial decisions, not even mine without dual approval. She gave me a curious glance, but didn't ask questions. You got it. I'll have it drawn up by noon. With the business secure, I turned to compiling a meticulous file of videos, screenshots, timestamps, daily surveillance logs. Everything Damien had uncovered. I cross-referenced them with Ariana's supposed treatment schedule. The contradictions were glaring. But the hardest part wasn't the data. It was coming home each night to sit across from a woman who looked me in the eye, smiled, touched my arm with practiced affection while plotting to gut everything I'd ever worked for. You seem distracted, she said one night as I poured a second glass of wine over dinner. I didn't flinch. Just some permitting issues on the Rivera project, I replied smoothly. Nothing I can't handle. She gave me a concerned little smile, hand brushing my forearm. You work too hard. I worry about you. I forced a smile, let it land like I believed it. I'll be fine. How was therapy today? She sighed, dramatically. Exhausting. But Dad says Dr. Westfield is seeing improvement. That's good, I said evenly, even as I pictured her in Franklin's apartment, her hair mussed, her lipstick smudged, pretending to be ill while scheming with my brother. That betrayal, Franklin, was the part that burned the deepest. I'd picked him up from the gutter more times than I could count. Rehab bills, bail money, referrals, jobs. I kept giving him rope, thinking he'd climb. Instead, he wrapped it around my neck. I needed grounding. I needed clarity. So I drove across town to Mom's. Eliza Hastings still lived in the modest ranch house where Franklin and I grew up. At 70, she was as sharp as ever, the kind of woman who didn't miss much even when you wanted her to. We sat on the porch like we had 1,000 times before. Her eyes never left me. Something's troubling you, she said finally. You haven't been yourself lately. I looked away, then back. It's bad, Mom. And I told her everything. I didn't soften it. I didn't hide the affair or the lies or the money trail. I laid it all out: Ariana, Franklin, Ron, the fake illness, the stolen future. She didn't interrupt. She just sat there, listening, the lines on her face deepening with every word. When I finished, she exhaled slowly, her expression grim. Franklin was always jealous of you, she said. Even as a child. Your father saw it, tried to correct it. But after he passed, she shook her head. I never imagined he'd go this far. I need to know if you'll be okay when this all comes out, I said quietly. Because I'm not showing mercy, Mom. Not to any of them. She reached across the table and took my hand. Her grip was firm. You do what you need to do, she said. Franklin made his choice. Now he faces the consequences. The following week felt like a siege, each day another front under attack. First it was the calls from clients. People I'd worked with for years suddenly sounded hesitant, evasive, 2 major deals I'd been negotiating for months abruptly fell through. Their reasoning? Concerns about Hastings Builders' stability. Max had warned me. They're trying to isolate you professionally, he said during our morning call. Create doubt about your ability to deliver. And they were succeeding. I lost 2 contracts this week, I told him. And 3 of my usual banking contacts suddenly won't return my calls. Ron's moving in his circles, planting seeds. Max's voice was clipped. We expected this. It's pressure, designed to make you react. Meanwhile, Franklin was working the subcontractor network, my network. I started hearing reports that he'd approached them, hinting at new opportunities through a firm with better backing, while implying I'd be stepping away from the business soon. Then came the tightening at home. Ariana, never one to complain, suddenly seemed frail around me. Her hands would shake. She'd forget details, ask me to repeat myself, act confused about simple things. One morning, over toast and coffee, she looked at me with practiced vulnerability. Maybe we should consider selling, she said lightly, as if talking about rearranging the furniture. Something smaller, easier to maintain. Dad found a lovely condo near his place. I lowered the newspaper slowly. This is our home, Ariana. We built it together. She held my gaze for a moment, just a second too long. Then the mask returned. Of course, I'm just thinking practically, with everything going on. But it wasn't just idle talk. The next day, I got a call from our bank. Mr. Hastings, did you authorize a transfer of $200,000 to an overseas account ending in 938? I nearly dropped the phone. Absolutely not. It was flagged and blocked for now. We need your confirmation to halt it permanently. Block it. Immediately, I said. And send me every detail you have. I didn't even confront her right away. I went home, reviewed Damien's footage, and there it was, Ariana on the couch, laughing, joking on a video call with Franklin as she keyed in the transfer. That was the moment I knew the gloves were off. But nothing prepared me for what came next. Ron showed up at my office. No appointment. No warning. Just barged in like he owned the place. And he didn't come alone. This is Dr. Lancaster, he said coolly, gesturing to a stiff, gray-haired man in a suit that screamed expensive but sterile. We need to discuss Ariana's care plan. Without waiting for an invitation, he dropped into a chair. The so-called doctor followed suit. I stayed standing. What care plan? She needs specialized treatment, Ron said smoothly. Only available at a facility in Switzerland. My chest tightened. Switzerland. Dr. Lancaster has been consulting on her case, Ron added. He agrees it's her best option. Lancaster gave a solemn nod, lips pressed together like this was a funeral. The protocol requires an extended stay at least 6 months, Ron continued. And due to the experimental nature of the treatment, the facility requires payment up front. I folded my arms, refusing to blink. And how much would this experimental treatment cost? Ron didn't miss a beat. Approximately $1.2 million, he stated, given the circumstances. I leaned back in my chair, watching them both. Ron was trying to look noble, concerned. The so-called doctor just sat there like a wax figure. I suggest liquidating some of your business assets, Ron said, as if he were offering financial wisdom instead of orchestrating a con. I tilted my head, deliberately casual. Interesting timing, considering the Rivera project closes next month with a substantial profit. This isn't about money, Ron shot back, his tone full of fake indignation. This is about my daughter's health. Of course, I replied smoothly. Then I'll need to review the treatment documentation. Have the facility send me all the information directly. There's no time for that, he snapped, leaning forward. Ariana needs to begin treatment immediately. I smiled. Then you should have no problem providing me with all the details. After all, you have her best interests at heart, right? His jaw tightened, his eyes flicking briefly to Lancaster. The specialists won't release detailed protocols to non-medical personnel. That's why we have the power of attorney arrangement. I see. I stood. Well, gentlemen, I have a meeting. I'll consider the Swiss option and get back to you. As soon as they were gone, I called Damien. I need everything you can dig up on a Dr. Lancaster, supposed specialist in inflammatory conditions. Something tells me his medical license is as fake as the rest of this operation. Damien didn't disappoint. Within 24 hours, I had the truth. Dr. Lancaster was actually Gregory Lancaster, a former business associate of Ron's. No medical license. No formal training. Nothing. The Swiss clinic? Real. But they had no record of Ariana Hastings. No treatment plan. No upcoming patient. When I relayed this to Max the next morning, he shook his head. They're getting desperate. Ron probably expected you to wire the money immediately without asking questions. I stared at the evidence again. Then he doesn't know me very well. That evening, I got a text from Franklin. We need to talk. Alone. It's important. I met him at a quiet bar on 4th and Kingston. He was already seated at the far end, eyes darting around like he expected to be followed. You wanted to talk? I said, sliding into the booth. Franklin rubbed the back of his neck. He looked rough-drawn, jittery. I'm worried about Ariana, he started, voice low. Ron's pushing her too hard with this scheme. She's not sleeping. Constantly stressed, trying to keep up the act. I kept my tone even. Playing sick must be exhausting. He froze. What are you talking about? Cut the act, Franklin, I said, meeting his eyes. I know everything. The affair. The fake illness. Ron's embezzlement scheme. All of it. His face went pale. Blair, listen. It's not what you think. It's exactly what I think. The only question now is, what are you going to do now that I know? He leaned forward urgently. Ron's dangerous when crossed. He's got connections you wouldn't believe. If you confront him directly, he'll destroy you. I stared at him. Is that concern for me? Or are you just afraid of losing your meal ticket? I'm serious, Blair, he hissed. The man's ruthless. When his former partner threatened to expose some financial irregularities a few years ago, the guy ended up with federal charges. Franklin's voice dropped to a whisper. For crimes he didn't commit. Franklin sat hunched over his drink, his guilt almost radiating off him. Ron planted evidence. He whispered like it was some kind of defense. I studied him. There was a time I would have jumped to protect him. That time was over. Throwing Ron under the bus won't save you, Franklin. I know that, he said, barely meeting my eyes. But maybe I can help minimize the damage. For Mom's sake, if nothing else. You lost the right to invoke her name when you slept with my wife, I said flatly, rising to leave. Enjoy the rest of your drink. It might be your last taste of freedom for a while. The next 7 days were war by another name. No emotion, just tactics. I started by meeting with Dr. Bennett, one of the few medical professionals I still trusted. He had treated Ariana briefly, before Ron and his specialists took over. She never presented with the severity of symptoms they're claiming now, he said, flipping through his notes. And I never referred her to a specialist. That was all handled outside standard protocol. Would you be willing to put that in writing? I asked. He nodded. Absolutely. It's unethical, and if what you're saying is true, criminal. His affidavit was just the beginning. Max helped me secure 2 more from nurses at the supposed specialist's office. I can't prove anything, one of them said, but Mr. Ron always brought cash. Envelopes. And the doctor started changing his notes after those meetings. Would you be willing to provide a sworn statement? Yes, she said without hesitation. Someone needs to say something. Then came the real break. Judge Sofia Alvarez. Max had reached out to her, knowing she and Ron had history. She was sharp, methodical, and still seething about how he'd manipulated a prior corporate case in her court. She examined the power of attorney Ariana had signed. This notarization is garbage, she said, pushing the document across her desk. Paige Winslow didn't witness this signature in person. I know her. And by law, that invalidates the entire thing. That alone was enough to slow Ron down, but I wanted more. I wanted this airtight. The last person I expected to help was Natalie Keller, Ron's ex-wife, and Ariana's mother. We hadn't spoken in years, and she'd been persona non grata at every family function since the divorce. But when I explained everything, she barely blinked. Ron used the same tactics in our divorce, she said during a video call. Her voice was steady but tired. He created false narratives, manipulated records, leaned on his banking and legal friends. He's always been obsessed with control. Did you ever think Ariana would be involved in something like this? I asked. Natalie looked away from the camera. He shaped her from childhood to value power and wealth above all else. I tried to counter it during visitations, she sighed. But I failed her as a mother. You're not responsible for her choices, I told her. No, she said quietly, but I'm willing to help expose Ron. I kept documentation from our divorce proof of how he manipulated finances, coerced me into a settlement. It might help your case. It did. Piece by piece, the puzzle was taking shape. Damien's latest intel sealed it. Ron's schemes weren't new, just better hidden. His glorious retirement from the corporate world? A lie. He'd been quietly pushed out after financial discrepancies came to light. Damien tracked offshore accounts in Ron's name, each one bloated with stolen money millions. Then came the final blow. He pressured Ariana's doctors into recommending unnecessary treatments and tests, Damien told me, handing over files and transcripts. And in exchange, he received kickbacks. Meanwhile, Franklin's calls became a relentless echo in my mind, desperate messages pleading for a chance to make things right. I ignored every one of them. I knew better than to trust that act of contrition. The final piece clicked into place when Damien handed me the records from Franklin's pharmaceutical company. Franklin had been stealing medication samples, the same ones prescribed to Ariana, and selling them on the side, splitting the profits with Ron. It was the kind of betrayal that cut deep. Max reviewed everything carefully. We have enough, he said firmly. More than enough to invalidate the power of attorney, file criminal charges, and make sure you're protected in the divorce. When do we move? I asked. barely able to keep my voice steady. According to the surveillance, they have another appointment Thursday at 2 p.m. That's our moment. I nodded slowly, feeling the cold resolve settle in. Make the arrangements. And Max, I want them destroyed not just legally, but completely. Max met my gaze with a look that acknowledged the icy fire in my eyes. Understood. Over the next few days, I maintained the facade flawlessly. I showed concern when Ariana claimed new symptoms. I nodded along when Ron suggested more aggressive treatment options. I even swallowed my pride and apologized to Franklin for our argument, suggesting dinner to clear the air. I had to keep them off balance. The night before the appointment, Ariana found me in my home office. She leaned against the doorframe, voice soft but probing. You've been working late every night. The Rivera Project, among other things, I replied vaguely, unwilling to give her more than she deserved. She moved behind me, hands resting on my shoulders. The touch felt like acid on my skin, but I forced a smile. I'll be up soon. Just need to finish these projections. After she left, I opened my laptop and sent a single message to Max, Damien, and the rest of the team. Tomorrow, 2 p.m., execute as planned. Thursday dawned clear and crisp. I kissed Ariana goodbye like it was any other day, though my mind was far from normal. Instead of heading to my office, I met the assembled team at Max's law firm for a final review. Hospital security has been briefed, Damien confirmed. We'll be discreet, but ready to intervene if necessary. The court clerk has Judge Alvarez standing by for emergency orders, Max added. And the DA's office has reviewed our evidence package. They're prepared to file charges immediately upon our signal. I nodded, my expression resolute. And the accounts? All joint accounts have been frozen, Max confirmed, his tone steady as if delivering a final verdict. As of this morning, Tessa, your financial advisor, reported your business assets are secure behind the new corporate structure. We've also flagged all your properties with fraud alerts to prevent any unauthorized sales or transfers. I let that sink in. No more slipping through their fingers. At 1:30 p.m., I received the confirmation I'd been waiting for. Ron had picked up Ariana. Surveillance showed Franklin joining them in Ron's luxury sedan. Just as expected, they were headed straight to the specialist's office. They're moving, I announced to the team. Let's finish this. When Ron, Ariana, and Franklin arrived at the medical building, the usual parking area was cordoned off for maintenance. Forced to use the main entrance, they walked right into the trap I had carefully laid. As they approached the specialist reception area, two uniformed security officers stepped forward, flanking Maxwell Thornton. He stood there in his most imposing charcoal suit, the perfect image of authority. Mr. Keller, Mrs. Hastings, Mr. Hastings, Max greeted them formally. If you please, follow me. What is this? Ron demanded, his voice sharp. We have an appointment. That appointment has been canceled, Max replied coolly. Dr. Westfield is currently meeting with investigators from a state medical board regarding certain irregularities in his practice. Ariana's confident facade cracked. What are you talking about? Where's Blair? Mr. Hastings is waiting for you in conference room A. I suggest you cooperate fully. Security will escort you. Franklin took a step back, eyes wide. I'm not involved in this. I just came to support Ariana. Max raised an eyebrow. That's interesting, considering the evidence we have regarding your role in obtaining unauthorized pharmaceuticals. The DEA is particularly interested in speaking with you, Mr. Hastings. Color drained from Franklin's face as they were led through the building. We entered a large conference room where I was already seated at the head of a long table. Damien and Tessa flanked me, along with two stern-faced representatives from the district attorney's office. Please sit, I instructed calmly. Ron recovered first, his arrogance surfacing like a bad habit. What is this theatrical production supposed to accomplish, Blair? If you have concerns about Ariana's treatment, we could have discussed them privately. Like you discussed the power of attorney with me. I met his gaze without flinching. Or perhaps like you discussed the fake Swiss clinic and your non-existent Dr. Lancaster. Ariana shot me a panicked look. Dad, he's bluffing, Ron hissed. He has nothing. I nodded to Damien. At that moment, a projector on the wall flickered on, and a series of surveillance photos appeared. Ariana jogging effortlessly in the park, looking nothing like the woman supposedly crippled by debilitating fatigue. Then Franklin and Ariana entering his apartment building, calm and composed. And there was Ron, meeting with Dr. Westfield in a dimly lit parking garage, exchanging an envelope. This is just the beginning, I said quietly, my voice steady but edged with the weight of everything we had uncovered. I have text messages, bank records, witness statements, even your ex-wife's testimony, Ron. Every minute of this elaborate fraud has been documented. Ariana's composure shattered completely. You've been spying on me on us. I gave her a hard look. Rich, coming from the woman who's been systematically lying to her husband while sleeping with his brother. Max cut in sharply, The real question is, what charges you'll be facing. Franklin suddenly stood, his voice trembling. I want immunity. I'll testify against Ron. This was all his idea. He pressured Ariana and me into it. Ron snarled, lunging toward Franklin, fury flashing in his eyes. Security officers moved quickly to intervene. Sit down, Mr. Keller, one of the DA representatives ordered firmly. You're in enough trouble without adding assault to the list. I watched the chaos unfold with detached calm before raising my hand for silence. Here's what's going to happen, I began, my voice cold and measured. The fraudulent power of attorney was invalidated this morning by Judge Alvarez. Medical fraud charges are being processed as we speak. The Financial Crimes Division is freezing all associated accounts pending investigation. Turning to face each of them, I spoke directly. Ron, you're looking at multiple felony counts, including fraud, practicing medicine without a license, and criminal conspiracy. Franklin, you'll be charged with theft of controlled substances, fraud, and conspiracy, at minimum. My gaze softened just slightly as I addressed Ariana. And you fraud, conspiracy, attempted grand theft plus, of course, the divorce proceedings, which begin today. Tears streamed freely down Ariana's cheeks. Now, Blair, please I can explain. Dad convinced me you were going to leave me. He said this was the only way to secure my future. I cut her off coldly. Save the performance. I've seen your texts. I know the real you, not this victim you're pretending to be. What do you want? Ron's confident mask cracked, his voice shaking. Money, is that it? We can make a deal. I stood, buttoning my suit jacket. What I want is justice. You tried to destroy me financially, professionally, personally. Now you'll experience the consequences. At that moment, as if on cue, the door opened. 2 police officers stepped inside. Ronald Keller, Franklin Hastings, Ariana Hastings, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, financial crimes, and medical fraud. You have the right to remain silent. The arrests made headlines all over the city. The business section screamed, prominent former CFO arrested in elaborate fraud scheme. Another headline declared, construction magnate uncovers family betrayal. The fallout was swift and brutal. In the days that followed, more details emerged as the evidence I'd painstakingly gathered worked its way through the authorities. Dr. Westfield surrendered his medical license rather than endure a lengthy investigation. Paige Winslow, the notary who had falsified documents, agreed to testify against Ron in exchange for reduced charges. Ron, facing the most serious accusations, watched his carefully cultivated reputation crumble. Former colleagues kept their distance, exclusive club memberships were quietly revoked, and philanthropic organizations erased his name from donor walls. At his bail hearing, the judge, an old adversary from his corporate days, set bail at $5 million, an amount Ron simply couldn't access with all his accounts frozen. Franklin, desperate to save himself, offered to testify against both Ron and Ariana. His pharmaceutical employer wasted no time firing him once news of the arrest broke. With no income and a destroyed reputation, he was left abandoned by fair-weather friends who had once enjoyed his lavish lifestyle. Ariana seemed to suffer the most immediate social consequences. Friends who had once sympathized with her illness now shunned her, their perception shifting overnight from brave patient fighting a rare disease to manipulative fraudster. Released on bail, she came home to find the locks changed on the house she once shared with me, her belongings packed in boxes and shoved into the garage. Meanwhile, I focused on rebuilding what they'd tried to destroy. I called a transparent meeting with all my clients, explaining the situation openly and assuring them that the business remained strong. Most stayed loyal, impressed by how I handled the crisis with integrity. 2 weeks after the arrests, my mother Eliza stopped by my office unexpectedly. The lawyers say Franklin is considering a plea deal, she said without preamble. I nodded. 20 years reduced to 7 if he testifies against Ron and Ariana. Eliza studied my face carefully. Are you okay? I forced a small, honest smile. I will be. The business is stable. The divorce proceedings are moving forward smoothly given the circumstances. The DA says the case is solid. That's not what I meant, she said softly. I sighed, allowing my carefully maintained composure to slip just a little. I trusted them, Mom. Both of them. I keep wondering if I missed signs earlier, if I was just blind. Eliza interrupted firmly before I could say another word. They betrayed you because they're deeply flawed people, not because you failed in any way. Your father would be proud of how you've handled this. Her words settled over me like a bomb. After she left, the phone rang. It was Max. Ron's attorney is reaching out for a deal, Max said. What kind of deal? I asked, my guard already up. They want you to advocate for leniency with the DA. In exchange, Ron will transfer the title to his lake house property to you and provide information on others involved in similar schemes. I didn't hesitate. Tell them no deal. Ron faces the full consequences. That evening, I was working late in my home office when the doorbell rang. To my surprise, Ariana stood on the doorstep, nothing like the polished, confident woman I had married. Her eyes were swollen from crying, and her designer clothes had been replaced by simple jeans and a sweater. 5 minutes later, she pleaded, "Please, Blair." Against my better judgment, I let her into the foyer, but no further. "I know you hate me," she began. I cut her off coldly. "I don't hate you. Hate requires emotional investment. I feel nothing for you anymore." She flinched but pressed on. "I deserve that. But I need you to know it didn't start out as a scheme. When Franklin and the affair began, it was just a terrible mistake. Dad found out, and instead of exposing us, he saw an opportunity." "So you're the victim?" I said, voice dripping with sarcasm. "No, I'm trying to say I made choices. Horrible, unforgivable choices. I could have stopped it at any point. I didn't, that's on me." She took a shaky breath. "The DA offered me a deal, 5 years instead of 20 if I testify against Dad. And you want my blessing. I want to do one right thing in this mess," she whispered. "What would hurt Ron most? What would bring you the most justice?" I studied her, searching for manipulation, but found only defeated resignation. "Take the deal, Ariana. Testify against him. Not for me, for yourself. Maybe you'll find a way to live with what you've done." As she turned to leave, she paused and said quietly, "I didn't love you once. Before greed poisoned everything. It doesn't matter anymore." I closed the door without a word. 6 months later, the legal proceedings had reached their conclusions. Ron received 25 years for multiple felony counts, his appeals denied by judges who remembered his arrogance during his corporate reign at 68. It was effectively a life sentence for Ron. Franklin accepted his plea deal, 7 years in prison plus 5 years probation. The once charming younger brother now shuffled through prison in standard-issue clothing, his manipulative smile replaced by a wary vigilance. Ariana testified against her father as promised, receiving a 5-year sentence with the possibility of parole after 3. The divorce was finalized with me receiving all marital assets. Given the circumstances, the medical fraud charges resulted in additional restitution payments that would ensure Ariana would live modestly for years after her release. On a crisp autumn morning, I stood at the groundbreaking ceremony for the Hastings Community Center, a project I had developed on land previously owned by Ron's exclusive country club. "We're building something that will serve everyone in this community," I told the assembled crowd, not just those privileged enough to afford exclusivity. The irony wasn't lost on the locals. Ron's former sanctuary would now become a place serving the very people he had spent his life avoiding. After the ceremony, Damien approached me with a smirk. "My sources say Ron's not adjusting well to prison life. Apparently, his cellmate is a former employee who lost everything in one of Ron's corporate takeovers. Cosmic justice." I nodded, unsurprised. "And Franklin? What about him?" I asked. "Working in the prison library. Keeps to himself. Word is he's writing a memoir, though no publisher will touch it." "And Ariana?" "She's in a minimum security women's facility, teaching our classes to other inmates." Damien hesitated. "She asks about you occasionally." I replied firmly, "There's nothing to say." That evening, I hosted a small gathering at my home. The core team that had helped me through the ordeal: Max and his wife, Damien, Tessa, and a few loyal clients who had stood by me. Also present was Carmen Vasquez, an architectural engineer I had been seeing casually for the past 2 months. As we enjoyed dinner on my terrace overlooking the city, Max raised his glass. "To justice served and to new beginnings," he toasted. Carmen smiled warmly, her eyes meeting mine. Later, as the party wound down, Carmen found me alone by the fire pit. "Penny for your thoughts?" she asked softly. I looked into the flickering flames and replied, "Just reflecting. 6 months ago, I thought I'd lost everything that mattered. And now," I paused, considering carefully, "now I understand what actually matters. Integrity, truth, building something real, not forgiveness." Carmen asked gently. "Some betrayals go too deep for forgiveness," I told Carmen one evening, my expression resolute. "But that doesn't mean you can't build something new from the ashes." The next morning, a letter arrived for me from Franklin, passed along through our mother. For a moment, I considered burning it unread. Some wounds don't need reopening, but I finally opened it. "Blair," it began, "I don't expect forgiveness. I wouldn't give it if I were in your position. But I need you to know that I understand now what I destroyed, not just your trust or our family, but my own humanity. You won with honor. You could have destroyed us in countless ways, but chose justice through proper channels. Even in your revenge, you showed more integrity than I've shown in my entire life. I'll spend the rest of my days knowing that the brother I betrayed was the better man in every way that matters." I folded the letter carefully and placed it in my desk drawer without a word. Some debts could never be repaid, some wounds never fully healed. But I had emerged stronger, wiser, more determined than ever to build a life defined by my own terms, not by the betrayals I'd survived. The lawsuit against Dr. Westfield and his collaborators concluded with a substantial settlement, which I donated entirely to medical ethics education programs. The power of attorney scandals spurred legislative reforms, finally closing the loopholes Ron had exploited. 1 year to the day after that confrontation in the doctor's office, I visited the 3 graves I had installed on a remote corner of my property. Simple stone markers bearing only the names Ron Keller, Franklin Hastings, and Ariana Hastings, their dates of death listed as the day of their arrests. "You died to me that day," I said quietly to the empty markers. "Whatever happens when you're eventually released doesn't change that." I placed no flowers, offered no prayers, just a silent acknowledgement that the past was buried, allowing me to build a future untethered from betrayal. As I turned to leave, my phone rang. It was Carmen, reminding me about dinner with her parents that evening. For the first time in a long while, I smiled, genuine warmth breaking through. The betrayal had nearly destroyed me, but in surviving it, I had discovered my true strength, not in forgiveness, but in the unyielding resolve to create something better from the ashes of deception. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.